He is a woke leader in woke times. In his 5 years as the head of the NBA, Adam Silver has tackled everything from gender equality to racism.
The views expressed by Mr. Sterling are deeply offensive and harmful. That they came from an NBA owner only heightens the damage and my personal outrage. I am banning Mr. Sterling for life.
It took Silver just 2 months on the job to set the tone of how he intended to lead the league, forcing the sale of the Los Angeles Clippers when its owner, Donald Sterling, was caught on tape making racist comments. 2 years later, Silver was at it again, pulling the All-Star game out of Charlotte in response to North Carolina's controversial bathroom law that discriminated against transgender people.
We stand united being against any form of discrimination for any group in our society.
And when the NFL froze out Colin Kaepernick for protesting racial injustice in America, Silver said he was proud of the response shown by NBA players as they rallied behind Kaepernick's cause. It's no wonder he's being called the most progressive commissioner in professional sports. We're happy to have the time with you. I caught up with him at the NBA headquarters in New York. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for making time for Canada, Commissioner. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Obviously, we're feeling pretty good in Canada. We only have the one team, as you know. So
You used to have two.
I know. We'll get to that.
All right.
We'll get to that. We're about to celebrate 25 years of the NBA in Canada. How do you feel it has gone, with the exception of the other team, which we will get to? But the success of the Raptors. What are your thoughts about it?
My thoughts are it's gone incredibly well.
Yeah.
I was here 25 years ago when we expanded to Canada, and I think if we rolled the clock back and said, what are our fondest hopes and prospects for basketball in Canada, I think we've met them. I mean, the fact now that we have more players in the league from outside the United States, that the most players are from Canada, 13 right now in the league, which is quite incredible. And we're seeing stars emerging out of Canada. And of course, we're seeing the success of the Raptors right now. And the country, it's not just Ontario, but the country, has adopted the Raptors as their own. And lastly, I'll just say we're seeing it in terms of participation. We're seeing young kids, boys and girls, embracing the sport.
Since you were here when the expansion happened and there was initially the team in Vancouver, I know David Stern previously expressed regret that didn't work out. Do you have the same sentiment, or do you think it was ultimately best that the Grizzlies left when they did?
That's a tough one. I think in retrospect, I wish we had a team in Vancouver right now. I think clearly Canada could handle two NBA teams, sort of west and east in the country. So I share David's sentiment that we do have regret. I think we were a bit ahead of our time. I think there was a moment in the league where prospects seemed down in terms of the team. Attendance was down, ratings were down. So I understood from an economic standpoint why the then team owner wanted to move the team. And unfortunately, we're not in expansion mode right now, but it would be nice to have a team in Vancouver. It's a great market. I frankly have some in-laws that live in Vancouver. I get there. It's a beautiful city. Yeah. But we have regrets, and I think from a business standpoint, it's a failure. I mean, any market we leave, there's no other way to look at it.
What about the concerns that there have been, continue to be, I think, over Canadian teams being able to retain star players, whether it be taxes, weather, whatever? Do you think that those concerns have faded away, or do you think that the Raptors are still trying to? I think they are. If you look at Kawhi, that they're still struggling with that. How do you keep big names?
I don't think that the Raptors are struggling with that. I mean, we'll see what happens here, but I think increasingly we're a 30-team league, and those issues weren't unique to the Raptors. I mean, people have historically said that about lots of markets in the United States, and I think, frankly, in the old days there was some truth to it from an economic standpoint, that if you were in a larger market in the U.S. as opposed to a smaller market, there was more economic opportunity for the player. I think that's very much changed now. I think that if we have Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee, viewed as a small market in the U.S., he happened to be the #1 vote getter for fans globally for All-Star this year. I think that makes the point that with digital media and social media these days, you can be a huge global star regardless of where you are. And I mean, given what an incredible city Toronto is, I think the way players see it now, that if I can prosper there, if we have a well-managed team, which you do there, and the team can be successful, and we're seeing obviously real success with the Raptors right now. I don't see any reason why a player wouldn't want to spend his career there.
So what do you think is going to happen to Kawhi Leonard? Because it's a lot of anxiety right now. People are relying on him and they see a future with him.
The truth is, I don't know. From that standpoint, I really know more than a fan. I mean, I don't think it's my role to sort of question a player, and I think in many cases, I think these are young men who often don't know themselves, and until they're ready to make that decision, they seem to be fully focused. I think Kawhi would be an example of a player like this, who he's all about winning. And I think when it comes time to make that decision, he will, but I have no reason to believe that he isn't incredibly happy in Toronto, and again, we're seeing the success on the floor right now.
How much of the success of the Raptors has to do with Masai, and how much of his success is part of your global footprint because he's the first exec from Africa? How important is that to you?
Masai is incredibly important to this league and to the Raptors. I mean, to your point, I mean, certainly our first African-born GM. He grew up in Nigeria, and I think but is very much a global citizen, and I think that makes sort of him a great fit for Toronto, very much a global city. I mean, and look, 25% of the players in this league right now were born outside the United States, so I think for many of our players, they love the diversity of Toronto. They love living in Canada, so it's very much a positive for a lot of our players.
Why has the NBA taken such a progressive stance on so many social and cultural issues? The All-Stars game in North Carolina, allowing the players to be very much themselves, political if they want to be, and not if they don't. Why is that so important to you, to be progressive in that way?
I think it's part of the DNA of this league. I think the international influence on this league as well. I mean, the fact that we're a diverse league in many ways. I think we preach tolerance to people, that we're accepting of lots of different viewpoints in this league. And something I'm particularly proud of is that as we talk about the safety in being allowed to talk about issues that are important to you, that's been translated by a group of our current players into talking about issues of mental health and wellness. And Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan, of course, speaking out about anxiety and depression.
I think everyone walks around with something that you can't see.
We all go through it. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are, man.
The best thing that I did was to come out and say, hey, look, I need some help.
It's been amazing to me because their willingness to talk openly about issues like that has opened the door for literally millions of young people to feel comfortable thinking, well, these supposedly tough athletes, can destigmatize talking about issues like that. And for those young people, it's not necessarily even about speaking out publicly. It's about their willingness to say to a parent, a teacher, an administrator, a coach that I'm not feeling well, there's something bothering me. Things that I know that when I was a kid, and played sports, was something that seemed like the furthest from your imagination, that you would be able to tell someone something like that.
And is there a risk inherent in it? Because obviously other leagues, the NFL is the obvious one, feel quite the opposite. They feel that there is a risk in players being political, associating themselves with political candidates even, which is also welcome here. So is there a risk in it, or does that sometimes worry you that a player might go too far?
Yes, I mean, I think there is risk, and it's part of my job to worry, so I spend plenty of my time doing that, but ultimately I feel this is values-based as opposed to political. I mean, not to say that players don't have every right to express political points of view, and many do, but I think when it comes to the league speaking out, we don't make political statements. I feel we make values-based statements, and we talk about the long-term and long-time values of this league, values like diversity, values like tolerance, values like respect for others. And I think that as long as we stay on that path and make it values-based, I think we're going to be in the right place.
I want to talk a little bit about race, because it's one of the things you first had to deal with the Donald Sterling tape. Not that we have to go back over that, but some things have sort of popped up again in recent weeks with Russell Westbrook and a couple of other players who have felt and been insulted with racial comments on the floor.
How it started was a young man and his wife in the stands told me to get down on my knees like he used to. And for me, that's just completely disrespectful to me. I think it's racial. I think it's just inappropriate.
What are the league's concerns over racial issues in this country bubbling up into the league, and how can you do anything about that? Because it's a much bigger context, obviously.
It is a bigger issue, of course, than just our league.
Yeah.
I think, though, we of course try to control those things that are within our control, and that is fan conduct, for example. And I think we've tried to make a very bright line, or create a bright line between what is appropriate, I don't know, heckling, call it, you know, that people pay their
Trash
money,
talk.
they come in the arenas
Yeah.
and they know, you know, you get to yell at the referees
Yes.
or players, whatever
Yeah.
else. You get to yell at the commissioner or whatever, that's
Yeah.
all part of it,
Yeah.
but then there's something that falls in the category of hate speech. And we had an example in Salt Lake City of something that would have fallen into that latter category. And I think what we do is, by having the appropriate security in the arena and appropriate monitoring, and to quickly act and demonstrate to fans that if you cross a certain line, you won't be welcome in our arenas. I think we're able to deal with that conduct, frankly, in a way that I think society wishes they could. But again, I think it's something that we have to be very vigilant about.
Do you worry about, I think it's 75% of the team is of the players are black, I think that's right, and we do not see it reflected through team ownership, certainly, and even general managers, and there's never been a black commissioner. How much should the league better reflect the people who are playing in it? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at society, I don't necessarily think the standard is if you have 75% of your players who are black, therefore it creates an obligation that management should be 75% black. I think we should be praised the fact that we have such a diverse workforce. I think, can we be more diverse in terms of ownership and management? Of course, and that's something we're working towards. I mean, it's not, we don't have a quota here, it just happens to the fact that the deputy commissioner of the NBA is black is something that we're proud of, although he's someone who, before he was the deputy commissioner of the NBA, was a longtime employee, just as I was, and moved up the ranks. You know, Michael Jordan, of course, is an owner in this league. We have Vivek Ranadive, you know, born in Mumbai, India, someone of color who owns an NBA team, increasingly more women in positions of management. So it's something we're very focused on, but again, I think that's no different than any industry where we're learning that the best decisions are made by diverse management groups, and changes are coming in society. We're seeing it.
Because you brought up women, just a last question on that topic. The NBA has gone a long way to support the WNBA and women playing basketball, as you say, even in the coaching staff. In Canada, there was the CWHL that just folded, and lots of the women players have now reached out to the NHL to say, why can't you help support us? So I'm just wondering if there is a lesson in what you guys do for the WNBA for other leagues to try and support women in professional sport.
You know, I'm always reluctant to weigh in on other leagues, only because I don't know enough about it. I mean, I certainly read the stories about you know, the hockey league folding, I would say.
But how important is that to the NBA?
Well, in the case
guys?
of the NBA, the WNBA is critically important. I mean, we've been operating that league for 22 years now, but there are difficult business issues. We haven't turned it into a sustainable business yet, but we're on the path to doing so. We're sitting down with our players now and talking about a new collective bargaining agreement. It's actually our hope that we can build a business that will allow us to pay them more, and even significantly more, and over time, again, be a standalone business.
But you're committed to it.
I'm committed to it. And I think, to your question, do I feel a bit of an obligation? Yes. I think we can never look at sports as just any other business. Because, frankly, if it were any other business, the WNBA probably would not still be in business, because the people who are making the investments would say, we've been at this for a long time, we're not making money yet. So that's not the only way in which we look at it. I think we, in terms of the NBA, we look at it as a strong investment on behalf of basketball generally, on behalf of women. That's why I recognize for hockey or for any other sport, you said it earlier, these are larger societal issues. And again, with the WNBA, I think in many ways we're way ahead of our time, because it's just now we're beginning to see the mainstream acceptance of professional women's sports. And ultimately, if it's going to be a business, that's required, because you need people to buy the tickets and buy the merchandise and watch it on television.
What happens if we win? What happens if Canada wins? Is that a bad thing?
Are you kidding? It's a wonderful thing. I think whoever wins the championship, no doubt, deserves it. And so I'm rooting for all our teams.
Do you love your job?
I really do.
Yeah. You could tell.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for
So
being
nice
here.
to meet
Yeah,
you.
you too.